Okay, so let's get into what has to be one of the wildest cyber warfare stories, maybe ever. This isn't about massive government agencies or spy thrillers. This is the story of how one person with a laptop basically made a nuclear-armed country just poof, disappear from the internet. So picture this. It's January 2022, and all of a sudden, North Korea just blinks out of existence online. The entire country, gone, vanished from the global network. And as you can imagine, every intelligence agency on the planet immediately goes into overdrive, assuming it's a massive attack by another superpower. But they were all looking in the wrong direction. Because what was really happening wasn't some high-stakes act of war. While the world was picturing a command center full of generals and flashing screens, the reality was, well, it was almost absurd. The person responsible for the whole thing wasn't in a bunker. He was just a guy in his living room in flip-flops. All right, so let's break down what this digital blackout actually looked like, because we're not talking about your Wi-Fi cutting out for a few minutes. This was a complete, total, countrywide shutdown. I mean, for hours, every single digital piece of North Korea just ceased to exist. Every website ending in .kp, gone. Their national airlines booking site, dark. Government portals, disappeared. All those propaganda outlets they used to talk to the world, total silence. You can just imagine the panic buttons being slammed in spy agencies from DC to Beijing. It was like someone had literally pulled the plug on an entire country. So this brings us to the architect of all this chaos. And it wasn't some shadowy government group. It was one person who, get this, called his one-man operation the Pajama War. This is where the story gets just completely surreal. As the world's most powerful governments are scrambling for answers, the guy responsible, Alejandro Caceres, is just kicking back in his living room in Florida. He's eating spicy corn snacks and watching alien movies. Think about that. He was single-handedly paralyzing a rogue state in between scenes of a sci-fi flick. So the big question is, why? Why would anyone do this? Well, this wasn't some random attack. Caceres, who goes by the hacker handle P4X, wasn't actually the one who started this fight. He was finishing it. This whole saga kicked off because North Korea made one huge mistake. They tried to hack him first. Let's just walk through the timeline. A year earlier, North Korean state-sponsored hackers targeted Caceres, trying to steal his cybersecurity tools. So he does what you're supposed to do. He reports a foreign attack on U.S. soil to the FBI, and for a full year, he gets nothing, the digital equivalent of a shrug. So feeling like the system completely failed him, he decided, you know what? Fine, I'll create the consequences myself. And right here is where this story pivots. It stops being just a simple revenge tale and turns into a story about a massive, systemic failure. The real catalyst wasn't the North Korean hack. It was the complete inaction of his own government. This quote really captures his frustration perfectly. He saw firsthand that these digital threats move instantly, at the speed of light, while our official response gets bogged down in bureaucracy and red tape. He realized the very system that was supposed to protect him was just too slow, too cautious, to do anything at all. So he launched his own counteroffensive. He called it Project Funk. And yeah, the Funk stands for pretty much exactly what you think it does. He started probing North Korea's network, and what he found was kind of shocking. See, North Korea's internet, which is called Kwangmyang, it's not like the web we know. It's more like a tiny, fragile little digital island, almost completely cut off from everything. We're talking a couple dozen websites, tops. It's built for control, for censorship, not for resilience. Caceres quickly realized their so-called digital fortress was actually a house of cards. He discovered their entire system was running on ancient, laughably outdated software. They'd spent billions on missiles, but apparently hadn't bothered to update their routers. All of their internet traffic was being funneled through just a few key points, creating these massive bottlenecks. Their systems were just full of known vulnerabilities, things that had been public for years that the regime had never bothered to patch. So how did he take it all down? He used a pretty simple method called a denial of service attack. He didn't have to break down their door, he just had to send so much traffic at it that nothing and nobody could get through. The best way to picture it is to imagine 10 million people trying to rush through a single doorway all at once. Total gridlock. He just automated some scripts to constantly bombard those few weak points until the whole system just gave up. The attack was a massive success. And the message it sent was way louder and more effective than any diplomatic protest or economic sanction could ever be.
For 6 straight hours on January 26th, North Korea was digitally non-existent. Caceres proved that he could basically turn their lights off whenever he wanted. He didn't need to keep them down forever. He just needed to humiliate the regime and show them, and the rest of the world, just how incredibly vulnerable they really were.
Now, here's maybe the most fascinating part of the whole story. After he came forward in a big magazine article, you'd think the US government would want to arrest him, right? But they didn't. They didn't threaten him. They wanted to hire him. And that really makes you wonder why. It's because he did something in a few hours, from his couch, that their own multi-billion-dollar agencies hadn't managed to do in years.
But Caceres said no. He turned them down flat. He knew that his real power came from his speed and his independence, from not having to follow the rules and bureaucracy that had crippled the government in the first place. If he joined them, he'd just become part of the same slow-moving system error he was fighting against. He chose to stay a privateer, a ghost in the machine.
Ultimately, this whole story just goes to show you that the nature of power itself is changing. In our digital age, the ability to project real force isn't just for nations anymore. And it leaves us with this pretty provocative thought. The system is a lot more fragile than we think. And sometimes, the most disruptive force in the world is just a single, annoyed citizen who decides the rules don't apply to him anymore.